after a year in which there was no event because Barcelona, just 100 miles down the road, was hosting the 1992 Olympic Games. The Baja Spain, Europe's most significant rally raid, returned to Aragon and the town of Zaragoza. Though it traverses inhospitable terrain which has the appearance of a true wilderness, the route is just a short distance from Barcelona and a population of more than 3 million people. So the Baja attracts a large and vocal crowd of spectators and supporters, with plenty of local heroes to cheer for. But this event comes right in the middle of the rally raiding season and also attracts the big guns of the off-road community as their struggle for supremacy increases now the series has at last been given the recognition it deserves. After a certain amount of politicking and bureaucracy, this is part of the newly formed FIA Cup, generally seen as a precursor to the full World Championship status, which eluded it a year ago. That's just one good reason why the entry list here is so impressive, both in cars and bikes, but especially so in the four-wheel category. This event, though short, is a full qualifying round of the new World Cup, making the result perhaps a critical one. And so, topping the entry list were the full work squadrons from the two world-renowned heavyweights of rally raiding, Citroen and Mitsubishi. Their conflict continued throughout last year and this, fought out on the Paris-Dakar, the Faroes and the Atlas Valleys, and is now renewed on this short event. More of a sprint than the long-distance raiders are used to, but nonetheless tough. Since the last victories went to the Mitsubishi camp, including the last Baja Spain in 1991, there was a certain spirit of revenge in the French team. This fight was expected to be hard and with no mercy. Citroen and Mitsubishi both field a full squadron of entries. Bruno Sabi, one of the regulars, backed up by Saeed Al-Hajri, anxious to overcome the disappointment of his outing on the Atlas. Also present, the German rally driver Erwin Weber with the new wide-body Evolution version of the Pajero. But the two regulars may not have the party all to themselves as the Baja sees the proper debut of Seat's new off-road contender, the four-wheel drive Toledo, which had a disappointing debut in Portugal less than a month before and needed to be ready for its home event. They were driven by Jose Maria Servia in 214 and Cyril Neveu 215. Those front runners all compete in T3, the category for prototype vehicles. And the much more conventional looking Tiranos of Nissan Spain also run in the same class, although not necessarily at the same pace. This is a game for big teams and big budgets, although the spirit of rally raiding provides opportunities for the smaller teams and even privateers to snatch glory from their grasp. Here's a man to watch, Jean-Louis Schlesser in his buggy, the ex-sports car world champion, now a privateer in off-roading and the only one to have beaten the big teams in a rally raid, the Faroes, in the last couple of years. And Schlesser also explaining to the scrutineers that the engine of his buggy is not in the front, but at the back. So scrutineering continues with the other competitors, 129 of them in the four-wheel category. The Baja Spain has always had a good entry from the ranks of the privateers because it's not as long or as hard as the events in Africa and they don't need a big budget. But big team or small, large budget or almost invisible, before they're allowed to start the prologue, all of them must subject their cars to the same rigorous checks. They ensure basic safety as well as compliance with the regulation of each category.
Oui, mais il y a un compresseur avec.
Yeah. And you have to...
Before the start, the tense air of expectation. Rally raiding is different to the World or European Rally Championships, and its strange atmosphere attracts a wide variety of people as competitors. Jean-Louis Schlesser we have seen, Clay Regazzoni is a regular, and there are others too from all walks of life. These occasional entrants are often captivated by the scenery and the ambience of the raids. Perhaps not on the Baja, but certainly on the African events. There are drivers who've been returning to the Dakar since it first began, and whose unfulfilled ambition is simply to finish. For the time being, though, they just enjoy being there. For the spectators, the main attraction is sure to be the clash of the Titans, Citroen and Rothman's Mitsubishi, the machinery they bring to the event, and of course the world-famous drivers at the wheel. For enthusiasts, this is the pinnacle of technology in the sport, and Bruno Sabi explains just how complex his Mitsubishi Pajero is. I start with the navigation equipment in the Pajero. On the co-driver's side, we have all the trip masters, which enable us to always have the exact route mileage. We've got two of them in case of failure. And in front of him, the co-driver also has all the instruments to control the fuel, the lights, the air intakes for the engine, for the gearbox and for the differential. In other events, we also have GPS satellite navigation, but this is not a rally raid, so we don't need such precision in navigation equipment. The trip master is enough. Here in the middle, we have all the temperature indicators. The computer controls all the temperatures, and if there's a problem, it puts on a red light automatically. For example, if the water or the oil are too hot, it switches on by itself. In this other apparatus, I have also the temperatures of radiators, oil, front and rear shock absorbers, gearbox, and the front and rear differential. And in this machine, I have fuel consumption, speed, and the amount of litres remaining in the fuel tank.
La vitesse, si je veux, le nombre de litres qui me reste, etc. Donc toute la précision de la contenance des réservoirs.
On my side, the driver's side, the interesting instruments for me are the turbo pressure, which is important to know if the engine is always working at maximum, and also a rev counter to ensure that we don't exceed the maximum RPM for this engine, and all the fuses. I also have this red button for the brake ratio, because when they get worn, I must modify the front-rear ratio. And finally, there's an engine cutout. It's relatively simple for the Baja, because usually for rally raids we have more equipment because the race is longer and we need navigation equipment. Here it's reduced, but there are still lots of things to take care of, especially for the co-driver. The format of the event was the same as in its 9 previous runnings, only one stage of almost 800 kilometres, dusty and very hot. Like any other rally raid, that means there are tremendous demands upon the bike riders. They must navigate alone, so needing the kind of mental stamina to cope with the pressure and the thought process while travelling at high speed. And they must also have the physical strength and stamina to last the distance. Many of them will go the whole route standing on the pegs, which is extremely tiring. And ask any motocross rider how quickly his forearms pump up when he has to grip the bars as hard as he can for just a few minutes. A rally raid stage can last for hours. So on this first event, when the bike riders are not paired but enter alone, there is a concession, and the route for bikes was shorter, some 650 kilometres. The field wasn't as impressive as among the cars, but most of the well-known Spanish riders were there. Carlos Mas, number 50, Jordi Arcaron, the winner of the Atlas Rally earlier this season, and also some French and Italian raiders, Stefan Wagner, Thierry Charbonnier and Flavio Agradi. Day 2 of the Baja scrutineering over, and the action begins for the 100-odd riders who take the start. This action concerns only the prologue, just 3 kilometres long. On overseas events, it's usually a last or perhaps an only chance for spectators to see the whole field, and is fairly insignificant in terms of the overall event. Here on Baja 2, the prologue times don't count towards the overall result, but they determine nearly the starting order of the competitors as they leave the first time control for the start of the rally proper. That's one reason why the favourites take it easy. None of them want to take any unnecessary risks. In fact, most of them want to go really slowly, as slowly as they can. That's because none of them want to open the road for the other riders, and none of them want to show the right route to their rivals. So for that reason, we see the unknown riders doing well on the prologue, perhaps their best performance of the entire event. People like Gomez, Poo and Lopez aren't really in the running for victory. So while Kinigadna finished 16th, Arcaron's 26th, Carlos Mas 29th and Thierry Charbonnier in 32nd place, the lower numbered riders came to the fore on the leaderboard of this 3-kilometre special stage. This then is their moment of glory, but further down the timesheets the differences between the favourites aren't especially significant. It's only starting order, remember, and so all of them keep their chances when the rally proper begins. Some of the lower numbers riding this just like a motocross event, and that's the background of an awful lot of them. It's easier for the privateer entrants to come to an event like Baja on 2 wheels because once again the budget is dramatically reduced, and that's why there are such large numbers. And of course there's always the outside chance that one of them could do well. The classification then at the end of that prologue: Gomez, Poo, Lopez, Carlos Sotelo, one name we recognise, and Medina.
Eurosport.
Prologue will be opening the route, yes, but most important, will be clear of the dust cloud, which is a feature of Baja, Spain. It's high summer here, it's very hot, and the roads are very dusty. Because this is just a single stage, all of the favourites try their hardest on the prologue on this short special stage. And right from the beginning there's no doubt about the development of the race. The fight between Citroen and Mitsubishi started from kilometre 0. With all that action concentrated into a single day and 750 kilometres, both sides fielded a mixed bag of raiders and ex-rally drivers. While Citroen's hand was strengthened by the arrival of rally specialists Andrea Reghini and Timo Salonen, Mitsubishi filled their regular lineup. Bruno Sabi, we've seen, 203. The German rally driver Erwin Weber, 204, and you can see how wide the Evolution Pajero is. This is the aerodynamic version. If Weber does well, perhaps expect to see this filling the entire Rocking Mitsubishi entry list in the future. 205, Saeed Al-Hajri, anxious to overcome the disappointment of his last outing on the Atlas when this car disappeared into a water hole and was stuck there for several hours. Al-Hajri quick on the prologue, but he's a desert raider used to the slower pace of the longer drives. And also showing their possibilities on the prologue were all of the outsiders, even if most people know that it's really impossible to see a chance for the victory of any car other than a Citroen or a Mitsubishi, and that includes Jean-Louis Schlesser. And it also includes local hope, veteran Spaniard Salvador Servia at the wheel of the jolly Club Lancia Delta, a proven weapon in the World Rally Championship and in with a chance on a short sprint event like this. sporting the largest aerofoil device in the Western Hemisphere, it could play a major role in this event. This probably won't. 208 is the Portuguese UMM prototype, not especially competitive, but driven hard by Carlos Barbosa. .211, Jean-Pierre Fontenay, leader of the World Cup at the moment and favourite in the T2 class if his job as fast service crew for the Mitsubishi team allows him to put the hammer down. More from the Citroen Armada. 212, Italian rally driver Andrea Reghini on his first outing with the French team. .213, the Flying Finn, Timo Salonen, who hasn't forgotten any of the skills he learnt on the World Championship and recorded the fastest time on the prologue. In the battle among the other cars and trying to be first Spaniard is a family duel. Jose Maria Servia in the number 214 Seat Toledo and Salvador in the Lancia Delta. And it's Salvador in the Delta who takes it in the prologue by just 0.06 of a second. Among the privateers there were high hopes for Ramon Dalmau and his Mercedes, 5th on the Faroes last year and one of the stars of the Spanish domestic championship. Another Spaniard, veteran Miguel Prieto, competing now with the Nissan pickup built especially for rally raiding in the USA. But few people attracted more attention than Katrin Krabb, the German athlete banned from her own sport for using banned drugs. We saw her at the prologue and we also mentioned this man, Clay Regazzoni, the ex-Formula One driver who is now a regular in the Rally Raid Championship. Regazzoni was injured in a racing accident some years ago, but that doesn't stop him from taking part in what has to be one of the most physically demanding forms of motorsport there is available. Confined to a wheelchair, Regazzoni shows up everywhere and the going is hardest. Paris-Dakar, Paris-Le Cap, he's been on them all. His Mercedes is specially modified to allow him to compete at the same pace as those drivers who don't suffer from the handicap of having to sit in a wheelchair when they're not driving. The full array of instrumentation, more or less as we see on the Rothmans Mitsubishi Pajero, but as you can see the steering wheel adapted to allow Regazzoni to use his hands instead of his feet. An automatic, of course, but that's no drawback for a vehicle which crosses rough terrain like the Mercedes has to. And on board the full complement of spares and the same rigorous check that everybody else has to go through. Clay Regazzoni, as for all the other drivers and riders going through scrutineering before the start of the Baja, it's a fairly boring process. But on day two, out onto that 3-kilometre special stage and on with the action, Regazzoni just as fast as always. Jean-Louis Schlesser started running these buggies on Paris-Dakar several years ago. René Mathieu was one of the team members then and continues to use the original incarnation while Schlesser has moved on to his own Alpine-based machinery. As Schlesser has proved, they are tougher than they look, and when the going is easy, they're very fast indeed. All categories are represented here on Baja. The conventional pickups running in T2, never likely to be on the same pace as the extremely rapid and lightweight T3 prototypes, but the battle for class victory intense all the same. Nissan have always been strong contenders at this level in desert raiding. That level of commitment remains. Baja Spain, their home event, and understandably therefore the team well represented. Katharina Krab and her teammate Silke Fritzinger on their way to 62nd place on the prologue. But they were luckier than their teammates Mayer and Nip. And also luckier than Busquet and Gonzalez in the little Suzuki. The classification at the prologue then: Salonen the leader from Erwin Weber, Andrea Reghini, Pierre Lartigue and Bruno Sabi. Honours fairly even between Citroen and Mitsubishi. Monday morning and the start of Baja proper, 750 kilometres in one stage. It's a tall order for the bike riders especially. All the machines having been through scrutineering, locked up in Parc Ferme prior to kick-off. And all the drivers studying their starting positions as determined in the prologue. No sign of the great rivalry here between the teams, but all of them ready for the big moment. Erwin Weber preparing to do his best on that 750-kilometre drive.
I think a lot of things can happen on this race. It's a very long 700, more than 700 kilometers, and there are a lot of competitors and very good competitors. I don't know, it will be very warm today. I don't know what will happen. I hope at the end we can be first.
Weber, of course, wanting to be first, as does everybody else. Saeed Al-Hajri.
But I don't know what's coming in the roads. Some people say it's fast, some people say it's very slow, some people say too much dust, you know. And, I don't know, but I will try my best and I will see which will happen later on, you know. But sure, I will try to finish the rallies.
What do you think?
And there's rivalry too, not just between the big teams, but inter-family rivalry. The two Servias. We have all the chances, says Salvador. The car runs well and it's very well put together. We have to work in the services, but I'm not afraid because everything's ready, and if we have a bit of luck, we can have a good result. His brother has other ideas. One drives for Seat with the Toledo, the other driving the Lancia. He can beat me, but I'll do everything I can to make sure it doesn't happen. And his brother says, and I'll do everything I can to make sure it does. 8 o'clock in the morning, and the flag is lifted. Timo Salonen, winner of the prologue, sets off from Zaragoza out into the countryside of Aragon. The start of the one-day dash that makes it unusual in the world of rally raiding.
Everything can happen at this Baja. It's long and hard, and many fast drivers.
Again, a fight between Mitsubishi and Citroen, you think?
Normally there is no fight if we don't have any problem. We are faster. Citroen is so good car.
Despite those brave words from the 1985 World Rally Champion, this is very much a renewal of the old rivalry between the two heavyweights, Citroen and Mitsubishi. Their conflict, remember, went on throughout last year and this, and it's renewed on this short event, more of a sprint than the long-distance raiders are used to, but nonetheless tough for all that. Bruno Sabi, with 2 victories to his credit already, has to be the favourite.
effectivement, c'est encore une discipline nouvelle
This
pour
is a
moi.
new event for me.
pense que
I
c'est
think
un
it's a
compromis,
mixture of the World
entre
Rally
les rallyes
Championship
championnats
and
du
rally
monde
raiding,
et les
because we have to
rallyes
take a
raids,
fast pace
on doit
like
adopter
a
un
traditional
rythme
rally,
assez rapide,
but it's as long as a
on a
stage on
l'habitude de faire en
Paris-Dakar.
rallye
So it's
traditionnel.
necessary to
Et puis, ma
join
foi,
both
c'est
points
la-
of
c'est la
view, and if I
longueur
can
d'une
maintain the
épreuve
pace, everything will be
d'un
fine.
rallye comme le Dakar. Alors il va falloir, à mon avis, allier les deux, et si j'arrive à maintenir cette cadence, eh ben, ça devrait bien se passer.
But this brief format might well put an end to the recent supremacy of the Rothmans Mitsubishi team and Bruno Sabi, as Citroen arrive here flushed with success. Timo Salonen backed out of the World Rally Championship at the end of last season, but still has a feel for the speed of the sprint and proved the point by holding on to the lead he established during the prologue, drawing away from his teammates and his rivals through the early sections. Erwin Weber was closest to him at the beginning, another refugee from the European and World Rally Championships who's found a home with Rothmans Mitsubishi and found the strange solitude of the desert raids irresistible. The Baja perhaps lacks the loneliness of the deserts, but it has most of the other features of rally raiding. As the sun rises and the heat of the day begins to build up, the dust cloud hanging behind the cars, clearly a problem for everybody behind, but navigation, even in clear air, can also be a problem. And all of the drivers and the co-drivers looking for a way to cut seconds off the route. But what looks inviting can often be a blind or a trap. Andrea Reghini, the tarmac specialist of the Lancia squad, never quite as quick on the loose as he is on the hard stuff. And the Seats over that first hurdle, no leaky petrol tanks, and away out into the countryside of Aragon. The early sections a little bit fast, but ahead lies some really rough going. This is what Bruno Sabi was talking about, as the ground starts to break up and everybody has to take it carefully, and everybody here making the same mistake. Hard to believe that it's just 2 or 3 hours drive from Barcelona, one of the largest cities in Europe. But Baja, Spain, really is run over some very difficult countryside. Servia with that Delta and its enormous rear wing, making good going in the early sections. Jean-Louis Schlesser with the buggy too, enjoying this kind of countryside. It's light, it's fast and it's agile, and it does well in these conditions. Saeed Al-Hajri, 2:05. The man so anxious to overcome previous disappointments. And away from the prototypes T2 and T1, heavily involved in class battles of their own, even though they're not in contention for overall leadership. With Citroen and Mitsubishi fielding such vast teams at the front, all of them know that overall victory will be out of their grasp. Weber proving the speed of the new car. And Pierre Lartigue for Citroen right there. And the ZX, sleeker, smaller, but just as tough. This is the man you cannot overlook though, Bruno Sabi, who appears to be taking over from Ari Vatanen as the man you least need to underestimate. Vatanen, of course, made his name for Peugeot in the car that was basically the forerunner of Citroen's ZX Raid. Both of the Seat Toledos going well, and the inter-family rivalry between the two Serviers a feature of the day. Salvador Servia doing a very good job in the Delta and its first competitive outing on a rally raid event. Timo Salonen, the leader, with support in the shape of Lartigue, threatening to move ahead of the blue and white Pajeros, and a Guinea close by, making it look as though this could be a clean sweep for Citroen. But Sabi was fast when the track opened out. Both of the Seats going well. Jose Maria Servia hard on the heels of the Jolly Club Delta and his brother. Salvador Servia in the Delta now holding fourth place and threatening to do better. Then the picture changed suddenly at the front as Timo Salonen endured a lengthy and time-consuming stop to change a wheel, handing the lead of the rally over to the man behind him. That needn't have been so bad because at the time Citroen had been threatening a clean sweep of the leaderboard, remember. But this was only the beginning of the story. Sabi had been second, the only Mitsubishi in a pack of 4 Citroens, and was consolidating his lead as Salonen punctured again, changing a 1-minute lead into a 3-minute deficit. And as the cars began to pull in for service in different places, the conditions must have been a shock to the Jolly Club team, accustomed to more civilised conditions on the European Championship. This is worse than the Acropolis or Argentina. On the timesheets there were more surprises for them as well. Bruno Sabi was the leader, followed by the Citroens of Lartigue, Oriol, Salonen and Aguini. Erwin Weber was 6th, and behind him came the Seat of Jose Maria Servia, 6 minutes clear of Salvador Servia in the Delta now. But the Delta was going surprisingly well in increasingly difficult conditions. Questions about the eligibility of the Delta for the T3 class had been raised before the start, but since no one expected it to survive for long, no protests were made. Now Servia, who used to go so well in desert raids in the Porsche engine Lada Samaras, was proving to be an eye-opener to everyone. But Bruno Sabi, winner last time out for Rothman's Mitsubishi on the Atlas, was again on form and was clearly not going to let Citroen, Seat or the Jolly Club come between him and another victory. In just a couple of years, the Frenchman, who used to prepare his own Lancia Deltas for use in the European Rally Championship and occasional World Championship rounds, has become a veteran Dakar and a clear favourite on events like this. More to the point, in just a couple of hours, he'd overtaken everyone else on the leaderboard. The going was hard, and in these conditions, anything could still happen, as all of the competitors knew full well. But the rally had already settled in favour of the big teams, and it seemed that the form book was unlikely to be disturbed in any serious way. The Pajeros and the ZX Raids crowded the front of the leaderboard, with little time separating any of them just yet, and therefore little way of telling in what order they would emerge from the test of the faster second part of the Baja. The Seat challenge had half evaporated now, as Jose Maria Servia tried just a little bit too hard to catch his brother in the Delta. The Toledo hit a rock, deranged the steering and lost 30 minutes in service, a major amount in a short rally in which the leaders were still talking about seconds. But Cyril Neveu was still going well, so there was a chance for a top 10 place. Seat Sport, the competition team of the Spanish manufacturer, was created in 1986, and since then Seat have been involved in car racing with different models. With the arrival of the Toledo, they're trying to get a stronger market image in Europe for Seat. The debut of the Toledo Marathon was at the Portuguese Baja, where it only completed the prologue. A problem with the fuel tank prevented them from starting the rally proper. For Baja Spain, Seat chose 2 different drivers, one veteran bike raider Cyril Neveu and the other car expert Jose Maria Servia. The basis of the car is a standard Toledo with modifications for it to be a rally raid car. That means an improvement in the suspension and chassis, and this car has been engineered to give a solution to those needs.
Y el coche pues ha sido creado un poco en función de estas necesidades.
The Seat Sport team is composed of 25 people. They're not yet on the same level as the other official teams, Citroen and Mitsubishi, but they're trying to match the pace. The team manager and one of the car's designers explains. It was an idea we had that we could support two works cars in international competition. It's taken us some time to create the team and develop the Toledo Marathon, but we've achieved it. Now both cars were running strongly on their first real debut. But there was bad luck for Serbia because the hard part was nearly over. Shortly the cars would emerge from these hard rocky tracks out into open country, into rolling fields divided by narrow but fast dusty tracks. It's the kind of countryside that Jean-Louis Schlesser and the buggy prefer as well. Cyril Neveu, the veteran bike Dakar, now the leading runner for Seat. After the big works teams come through, we get down to the slower cars, and you can see for yourself just how difficult this terrain is. And for those who don't run purpose-built T3 cars with raised suspension, this kind of surface has to be taken very carefully indeed. Nissan, as we've seen, with a lot of entries on this event, and also of course Baja Spain just up the road, attracting a fairly heavy entry from Portugal. The heavier vehicles having to pick their way round the obstacles much more carefully than the works cars. And René Metz in the old design buggy which Jean-Louis Schlesser pioneered on Paris-Dakar, still going and making comparatively light work of the difficult terrain. Jean-Pierre Fontenay, leader of the Cup in the points at the moment, and also the fast support vehicle for Mitsubishi, although not particularly fast on this downhill section. All of these vehicles working the suspension very hard, and all of them absorbing considerable punishment. Another of the Portuguese entries, and completing the downhill run swiftly and undamaged. But by now a queue beginning to form on this downhill section, which gives you an idea of just how slow it is here. You can see the dust clouds hanging in the background as the cars back up behind each other. And again you can see that suspension working hard. Plenty of local support from the spectators. The UMM we saw earlier in the prologue, surviving the rigours of Baja Spain very well indeed, still running competitively for its level, dealing with the tougher sections perhaps more easily than with the fast flat-out running which comes later in the day. Not everybody took it quite so easily. And not everybody had such an easy run of it. Clay Regazzoni still going, and the Mercedes absorbing the punishment perhaps more smoothly but rather more slowly than some of the others. Just take a look back and see how hard the suspensions of these vehicles are working. The rough country really dishing out the punishment, and all of these vehicles taking it reasonably well, perhaps better than their drivers. Out here in the open though, the flatter terrain suits the bikes rather better. Indeed, their first part of Baja was shorter, but not all the riders in the saddle were on two wheels. And this rally should have been a story of favourites, but Atlas winner Jordi Arcaron had brake trouble, and other notable Dakars like Charbonnier and Wagner were also having trouble now and beginning to fade. This sustained high-speed running really is punishing for man and machine. KTM rider Sturry, who won here in 1988 with Jordi Arcaron when they rode as partners, was the man to watch. He took the lead in fairly short order and rode hard to hang on to it, and soon extended it to 3 or 4 minutes. Deposed from the leaderboard, Carlos Mas soon found that his battle to catch Sturry from second place was matched by the chase that Arcaron was mounting from behind, and right until the very last kilometres it was an open race. But in the end it was enduro rider Sturry who took the victory, first man to win since the format was changed to a solo entry. I am very happy to win this event, he said, especially since it has been changed to a solo rider, which is much more difficult. Behind Sturry came Arcaron, his ex-partner and the second of the KTM riders across the line. The rider sets the rhythm of the race, and from the beginning that rhythm was very hard, and that made everybody run at their limit for the whole 650 kilometres. I had a problem with my back brakes, and on 2 occasions I had none at all because the pads were finished, and that forced me to reduce my rhythm, but definitely I'm happy because I gave my best and I finished second. Third place, making it a successful outing and a clean sweep of the top 3 places for the manufacturer KTM, Carlos Mas, another rider who's won here before, but not since 1987. A hard day, but a satisfying one. Sturry the winner, Arcaron, and then Mas, Gilles and Lopez across the line in 5th place.
Eurosport.
Still a battle. Timo Salonen still had the possibility of victory, even though he was lagging behind the leaders. Erwin Weber too thought that there was a chance for him, but by now they were running out of kilometres and of time. Bruno Sabi was the man of the moment, just beginning to relax a bit with a growing lead over Pierre Lartigue in front of an enthusiastic crowd of spectators. And Sayat too had every reason to be happy with the situation so far. Cyril Neveu on his way to what looked like a definite top 10 placing. Servia too still running, but a long way behind, having lost that 30 minutes. And his brother very pleased with the success of the Delta Integrale in such rough conditions, and of course to have won the family battle, at least so far. Slesser too still going and using the buggy to best advantage. Now the road was open and fast. And Al Hazri too, no disasters this time out. Neveu down on road order, but ahead of the other Toledo on the timesheets. And behind comes this constant battle among the purpose-built pickups and four-wheel drives. All the leading competitors still going, and the Portuguese entry here to avenge defeat in their home event doing well. And as ever, the smaller teams showing up well towards the end of the rally, simply on the basis of survival. Travelling a bit more slowly reduces the punishment dished out to the vehicle and gives them a chance of getting to the line and scoring a good result. The buggy's still going well. This is Riviere. Going well despite its improbable appearance and even more improbable paint scheme. But by now, Bruno Sabi was the man making all the running, and it was beginning to look as though he could afford to relax. Pierre Lartigue had been trailing him by some 25 seconds, but the gap had gradually been increasing, and now it was out to more than 3 minutes. After 2 consecutive victories on his last 2 appearances, Paris-Dakar and on the Atlas, Sabi looked well set for victory number 3 for the Rothmans Mitsubishi. As the route looped out of Zaragoza and back in again towards the city, the crowds began to thicken up. Pierre Lartigue, running second on the road, knew that it was now or never. Servicing out in the wilderness, and that's really what this is, always attracts the spectators, and no wonder. A quick tyre change, a refuel, and off for the final moments of Baja, Spain. With everything to do, Pierre Lartigue set out in hot pursuit. He couldn't afford to press too hard. As close behind him as he was behind the rally leader came Erwin Weber in the wide-body Pajero. Bruno Sabi, though, was keeping up the pace, and the amount of spectators was growing ever larger. Lartigue really pushing from second. Weber a little bit more cautious now and anxious for a good team result. And in third place, still going well on rough ground, Andrea Reghini. Timo Salonen was also now back in the hunt and starting to chase hard. Citroen team closing in towards the front of the leaderboard, but a lot of these spectators had come to see the Toledos do well. Neveu was not letting them down. The other one was still going, but Neveu couldn't catch the Jolly Club Delta. Saeed Al-Hajri also there on the top of the leaderboard. And Jean-Louis Schlesser still finding the Baja tough in places. The Portuguese entry still going well. And the UMM also still in the running. Another improbable looking vehicle doing surprisingly well. This was where the nature of the Baja had changed entirely, and as the hills levelled into open fields, the navigation experts began seeking the direct route across country and also across fields. As the terrain opened up, the speed of the rally increased to over 200 kilometres an hour. Bruno Sabi still leading Pierre Lartigue by no more than a minute. It's a big gap on a World Championship event, but nothing over this sort of terrain and at these sort of speeds. The closing stages were more like a race than a rally and were packed with drama. Both drivers abandoned the piste and set off across country, each trying to gain a little time from the other. But then came high drama as Bruno Sabi reversed back to a control point to get a proper imprint from the official whose hurried stamp hadn't done more than smear the paper. In doing so, he blocked Lartigue, who tried to pass him. But Lartigue got temporarily stuck and was then forced to sit and watch as his quarry just drove away from him. Sabi put the time to good use, but the Citroen driver set off once again in hot pursuit and was able to take his revenge almost at once, as Bruno Sabi got lost on the penultimate section of the rally, circling around in the middle of nowhere looking for the correct route, allowing Pierre Lartigue and the Citroen through and into the lead. That one little moment had turned a 1-minute lead into a deficit of just a few seconds. Sabi now trailed Lartigue on the timesheets by a bigger margin than that visible on the road, and it looked like disaster for the Rothmans Mitsubishi driver and triumph for Citroen and Pierre Lartigue. They'd scored a victory on Baja, Portugal just a couple of weekends earlier, but that had been achieved in the absence of the Rothmans Mitsubishis. Now Lartigue led Baja, Spain, and looked set not only to win it, but to defeat the blue and white Pajeros in the process. Then came another upset. In the heat of the battle, Citroen suffered another puncture, and with it came suspension damage as well, and Sabi regained the front. Now back in the lead, and this time with a convincing margin of 12 minutes, Bruno Sabi was on course for his third consecutive victory for Rothmans Mitsubishi. Everyone told me it was as long as a big stage on Paris-Dakar, but that I could drive at a rhythm like the World Rally Championship. And so I was a little worried about endurance, and indeed they were right. I was very tired by the time I reached the finish. I tried to be careful and not hurt the car in difficult places because there was some really rough ground, very dangerous with lots of traps. I had to look out and take care and concentrate, but then when the road was good I attacked, and that made the difference. Though Pierre Lartigue was second, it was small consolation for the second of the ZX drivers to have led Baja. Erwin Weber third, Salonen fourth, Aghini fifth.